Good morning. In the studio with us today we have Zoe Powell, a freelance science journalist. Zoe has recently been working on a TV documentary in which potential criminals try to outwit a forensic scientist and get away with it. Zoe, I'm sure our listeners would find it very useful to hear how they did it.
Interesting rather than useful, I hope. Well, at one time, if someone committed a crime, you didn't have as much to go on. These days, of course, techniques are much more sophisticated. Recently, for example, there was the famous case when a kidnapping was solved 20 years later, after the seal of an envelope was re-examined and the tiniest trace of dried saliva found there.
So, if the kidnapper hadn't licked the envelope...
He wouldn't be in prison now. Exactly. You have to be so careful not to leave any trace of yourself at all.
Which is easier said than done, presumably, since our DNA is in virtually every cell in our body.
Indeed. If a person doesn't want to leave forensic evidence, they should just slide through a window, because any broken glass, or other damage for that matter, scratch paint, for example, comes in very handy to forensic scientists. One burglar, who was found recently through his DNA, would have got away with it completely if he hadn't been sweating at the time.
And if I were committing a burglary, I'd be better off wearing gloves, of course, so as not to leave fingerprints.
Well, yes, providing you didn't leave fibres behind, as these can also be traced fairly easily. It's the same with socks.
So, best to go barefoot then?
But even the tiniest fragment of skin is enough to match you, so you'd actually be better off covering up as much as possible.
But can't you get round the problem by wearing smooth clothes, like silk?
Absolutely.
No woolly gloves and socks then?
And needless to say, if you're going to burgle a house, you'll obviously try not to draw attention to yourself. Don't stagger out with a huge television or whatever. Do it quietly and avoid the temptation to rush out and sell whatever you've stolen right away.
So, Anne, why did you suggest this book? Well, I've bought quite a few self-help books over the past few months, and I suggested this one for the book club because my brother's been telling me to read it for ages. Apparently, it's sold over 16 million copies, and it's still selling well, which surprised me because it's pretty basic stuff, really. I mean, you know, smile at people. That's a bit obvious, isn't it? Or make the other person feel important. That's pretty obvious too. But as my brother said, if what Carnegie's saying is that self-evident, then why don't people do it? And he's got a point.
Yeah, I agree with your brother there. And, OK, even if some of the points he makes in the book seem basic, I mean, I still find it fascinating. Actually, I think people are getting fed up with me talking about it. I've told at least 10 people about it at work this week. To be honest, it's the first time I've read a book like this. And even though I haven't quite finished it yet, I mean, I've read about 150 pages so far, I totally agree with what he's saying. I mean, the bit where it says, as a rule, we aren't good listeners, I mean, that's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, we're usually just waiting to speak. If someone's talking about something that's happening to them or happened to them, then most people are just waiting to butt in, aren't they? With, you know, same thing happened to me, and off they go, you know, whittering on about themselves. I mean, I think Carnegie's right when he says that if you want people to like you, you've got to learn to really pay attention to what they're saying. Yeah. I mean, actually encourage the other person to talk about themselves by asking questions. I mean, showing that you're interested in them. Anyway, I've been trying to be a more attentive listener and not interrupt. But I tell you, it takes some self-discipline. As soon as you finish reading it, I mean, I'm going to give it to my brother because he's got no social skills whatsoever. I mean, it's true. What about you, Dean? Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. And to be honest, I wasn't expecting to. Like Si, I agree with a lot of what it says. Like the bit about how important it is to remember people's names. Never thought about that before. But a friend of mine, John, he's brilliant at that. And it works, especially when he's chatting up girls. For instance, last night we went for a pizza. I went to the loo, hadn't been gone for more than a minute, but by the time I got back to the table, he'd introduced himself to the 3 girls at the table next to ours and learnt their names.
Wow.
There he was saying stuff like, "So, Claire, how are you enjoying London?" You could see Claire was thinking, "What a nice guy." And I'm sure it was just because he called her by her first name. Actually, since Anne suggested this one, I've read a couple of his other books.
Yeah, I bought one of his other books recently too.
Ah.
Well, during the last couple of weeks, I've actually been trying out some of Carnegie's suggestions as well.
Oh.
You know, like the one where he goes on about how powerful a smile is.
Yeah. But that's true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, most people walk around with a scowl on their face so that when someone actually does smile at you, it really makes an impression.
It does. You know, he suggested smiling at everyone you come into contact with for a week and note what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I did, and it really does make a difference. Like, I've been going to the same train station for years, and up until now, I've never really had any contact with the guy in the ticket office other than "return to Richmond, please." So I started with him. You know, a smile and a bit of eye contact, and it was amazing. He's been really chatty ever since. Much nicer way to start the day. And remember the bit where Carnegie says, even if you don't feel like smiling, force yourself to, because smiling actually brings on a nice feeling.
Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to do that too, and it works.
Yeah. It's a different mindset, isn't it? And I love that quote, that the Chinese proverb, "A man without a smiling face must not open a shop." I know a few shop assistants who could learn from that. Especially.
I do get out and see friends on a fairly regular basis. It's usually based around squash or playing sports or something, and we'll end up with a drink and talk afterwards. What we talk about isn't deep and meaningful though, far from it. It's usually about current affairs, something like that, and it usually degenerates into a list of 5 best cars or old films or whatever. I think the whole issue of friendship between men isn't sort of based around the emotional bit. It's much more to do with common interests and the fact that someone is sort of into something that you are. I think if it was something serious, something close and emotional, you tend to go with and talk to older friends, people that you were at college with, someone that you think you could unload everything onto. The problem with men is that they don't do that. What usually happens is we sort of bottle things up and don't use friends as well as women do.
Well, if something major happened, it would probably be my parents I'd talk to first. They'd be the first people to know, but I do confide in my friends a lot on a day-to-day basis. We tend to meet about once a week, and we meet in a cafe. We always meet the same place, actually, and the reason we meet there is that they put up with all our noise. We try to snatch about half an hour, but that's what we say, but it usually goes on. We just relax and giggle, and I always end up saying much more than I'd intended to. So yeah, friends are a really big part of my life, and they have to put up with a lot from me, but I hope I'm able to give them a little bit back. But most importantly, we do manage to have a really good laugh about things.
Okay, a person who I tend to confide in is my hairdresser, funnily enough. I think the reason I confide in him is precisely because I don't want to unburden all my worries on my family. So the hairdresser is a neutral ground, if you like, where I can just go and talk, and I know what I say won't go any further because it's of no interest to my hairdresser. We've got a set routine, I suppose. We sit down and he's focusing on my hair, and we have a quick "how are you?" and he tells me very briefly, and then I launch onto what I've got to talk about. It was great, but it wasn't until he broke up with his girlfriend that my hairdresser started to confide in me, which really changed the dynamic of our relationship. Suddenly he became this person who had needs and who wanted to unburden himself onto me. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that he gave me such a good haircut, I'd definitely think about moving to another hairdresser.
I mainly talk to my friends, usually on MSN or by text, because they're my age group and they're the most interesting people to talk to. And we talk about a lot, like what's happened at school and the latest sports results and a lot of things like that. If there was a problem, I talk to my friends because they'd be more likely to understand what I was going through. Or maybe my sister, because she's also young and she'd know. I probably wouldn't talk to my parents because my mum would get in a flap and I don't think they'd really understand.
Well, my favourite saying is, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. It's probably not very exciting for British people, but for me as a non-native speaker, I thought it was really, really nice. It basically means that you can't always plan ahead and you can't control everything. Or to put it simply, you can't really worry about things that are way in the future. The first time I heard it was from my then boyfriend, Ben, and nothing has influenced my life more than that saying, actually. Ben and I are now married, so I reckon it worked out all right.
My favourite expression is you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, which kind of basically means that the less money you pay, the worse the service. It's an expression I've always wanted to tell my boss, but never really had the courage to do that.
One of my favourite sayings is, if you fly with the crows, you'll get shot with the crows. I can remember my grandmother saying it to me when I was growing up in Scotland. And what it means is that if you hang about with the wrong crowd, in what she was saying to me is at school, with people who behave badly, you'll get punished with them, even if you were wrong. I've not heard the expression in years, but recently I've heard it quite a lot in the news and political contexts.
Well, my favourite saying is something I picked up from my mum, and I use it because I'm not a very practical person. The saying is, why have a dog and bark yourself? And this basically means there's no need to bother doing something difficult if someone around you can do it better than you. So, for example, my boyfriend's a fantastic cook, and when people say to me, do you cook? I can say, why have a dog and bark yourself? Because there's really no need for me to bother.
Well, I grew up in a horsey family, and everyone in my family rode horses, except for me. And as a result of that, I picked up quite a few expressions involving horses. One of my favourites is horses for courses. Basically, different horses are involved in different kinds of races, and the horses are suited to its particular course. So, in real life, every person is suited to a particular job, every machine to a particular job. And horses for courses basically sums up that connection between the thing and the job it should do.
OK. Peter, will you please tell us the definition of the Australian expression, she'll be apples?
Lovely expression, isn't it? She'll be apples. Or should I say, she'll be apples. Well, what this basically means is someone is going to be really pleased, or surprised, or really thrilled with something. For example, if you show me a present that you've bought for your mother and I say, she'll be apples, this simply means I think she'll love it.
Naomi, your definition is?
Peter's pronunciation is very good. But of course that's not the real definition of she'll be apples. Let me explain the real meaning to you. As you know, apples are nice, they're sweet, they're good. So if a person is frightened or worried about something, then Australians try to comfort that person by saying, she'll be apples. In other words, everything's going to be fine, so don't worry. She'll be apples.
And finally, Ralph.
Actually, neither of those definitions is true. She'll be apples basically means you think someone is perfect for a particular job. If at an interview, let's say, the person applying for the position is fantastically well qualified and the best applicant, then you'd say, she'll be apples. Or to put it another way, you have a lot of confidence in the person.
OK, Shirley's team, which do you think is the true definition of she'll be apples? Does it mean someone is going to be really pleased or surprised? Or is it a way of saying, don't worry, everything will be fine? Or does it mean someone is perfect for a particular job?
What do you think?
I don't know. I thought that...
OK, Shirley's team, which do you think is the true definition of she'll be apples?
What do you think?
I don't know. I thought that...
I'm thinking, please.
Yeah.
Well,
I really don't.
I think I'm going to go for it.
OK.
Well, they're all convincing, but we think Ralph's definition is true.
We can imagine after a job interview, the interviewer's choosing someone, saying he'll or she'll be apples, meaning they'll be the best person for the job.
Ralph?
Sorry, wrong.
And the true definition is?
It means, don't worry, everything will be all right.
So Peter's team is in the lead with 2 points to 1.
Walking into Tommy McHugh's semi-detached home, you're overwhelmed by a cornucopia of shape and colour. Everywhere you look, on every wall and ceiling, there is a mass of abstract designs, animals and faces. Until he hit his 50s, only 6 years ago, Tommy was a Liverpool builder, with a bit of a rough past as a street fighter and no apparent interest in art. Nowadays, though, he's a man with a passion, full of emotion, driven to create. He describes his mind as a volcano exploding with bubbles, each of which contains a million other bubbles full of unstoppable creative ideas. He spends his days, and most of his nights, painting, sculpting and carving.
When you walk into my house, you walk into my brain. I've got that much going on in my brain. I have to let it all out or it overloads. I can't switch it off.
The transformation in Tommy has been quite remarkable. So, what happened 6 years ago to bring it about? The extraordinary answer is a brain hemorrhage. One day Tommy was in the bathroom when he remembers something popping in his head. By the time he reached hospital, his eyes had turned bright red and he was in agonising pain. 2 arteries in his head were leaking blood, and a delicate life-saving operation followed. Tommy's ex-wife describes what happened next.
A few days later, he was sent home with a bag full of tablets. I didn't know what to do. He couldn't walk, or feed himself, or do anything really. Sometimes he didn't even know where he was. It was awful. He was totally frustrated, angry, and in pain. So he took it out on me because I was the only one there. We didn't have any aftercare whatsoever.
Jan was desperate to find anything that might give her husband an outlet. She'd always painted as a hobby, so she handed him a pen and a piece of paper and suggested he try drawing. When she turned back from cooking the tea only a minute or 2 later, he'd filled the whole page with tiny faces, all different. Not surprisingly, Jan was unnerved, but this was only the beginning of it all. As soon as he was fit enough, Tommy started on the walls and also began to melt candles to sculpt heads of wax. At this stage, he didn't enjoy his manic creativity and wrote cries for help to doctors around the world. Most ignored him, but 2 letters hit home, including one to the artist Marion Calmus, who recognised in him an extreme version of what many artists feel.
I told him I couldn't stop the bubbles exploding in his head, but I did know a lot of people who felt like that. It's called being an artist.
This was a turning point for McHugh. It gave him a new name and a new identity, and he began to enjoy his work. The other letter, meanwhile, had reached Alice Flaherty, a neurologist from the US, who has a special interest in this field. Flaherty has corresponded with McHugh for several years and recently came to the UK to meet him. Cases such as his, she says, are rare, but not unknown.
Tommy's manic creativity is extremely likely to be down to changes in his temporal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for understanding meaning. Van Gogh almost certainly had temporal lobe epilepsy, and at times of great creative output, he not only painted, but would write constantly, which is not uncommon. Tommy does it too.
Flaherty strongly believes that the increased creative output may be partly because the brain is becoming less self-critical, and stresses that creativity is not necessarily a guarantee of quality. Indeed, McHugh's early paintings are nothing to write home about. But some of his recent work, now that he's had some practice, is wonderful, in particular his stone carvings. And even though there is no way of knowing how much longer Tommy will survive, he's not in the least bit depressed anymore. His life has become an adventure,
and he loves every minute of it.
One of the places I remember most are the Galapagos Islands.
Oh, yes.
This group of islands about 600 miles out from Ecuador.
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
yes.
Fantastic place. We went to see some friends in Ecuador, and then they organised this boat trip for us, which lasted about a week.
And were they exotic, sun-kissed tropical islands, as the brochures would have you believe?
Not at all, actually. They were quite grey. I just remember greyness, sort of volcanic rock, bit of vegetation, very cold, forbidding sea, and a lot of cloud. Even though we went in August, it was quite cloudy.
Did you get to see a lot of animals and birds?
Oh yeah, it's brilliant for that. Absolutely brilliant. You know, I was really excited. You have these giant land tortoises. You know, the famous tortoises. They've got albatrosses, which are unique to the island. Marine iguanas, blue-footed boobies.
What are they?
Oh, they're great. They're sort of rather stupid-looking, clumsy birds with blue feet and long necks, and they're about the size of a goose and do really strange, flappy dances. You know.
And are they tame?
Yeah, all the animals absolutely tame. You can walk right up to them. You can walk through them. They don't run away at all. They're absolutely fantastic.
Incredible.
I'm not sure I've told you about my trip to Ireland, have I?
No, you haven't.
No, well, this was last summer. I haven't seen you for a while. We were expecting sort of 2 weeks on beautiful sandy beaches, and we were expecting the lush green hills of Ireland. I mean, I'm American, so, you know, all the cliches of Ireland apply to me, and we all love to go there. Anyway, and we were expecting a beautiful lodge that we'd rented from some friends of friends. After we got there was sort of 18 hours travelling in this driving, pounding rain. We stopped off. Our first stop when we got near to the house was to buy the toughest waterproof gear that we could find. We then arrived very late at night at the house, which turns out to be not a beautiful lodge, but a very stark, modern log cabin.
No rustic charm then?
Primitive is more than rustic, I think, the word there. And the thing that we decided to do the next day was get up and explore our surroundings. Instead of a sandy beach, what we had was a very thin strip of gravel.
Oh dear.
And the owner had forgotten to tell us that the beach was actually half an hour's sail away in a very small dinghy.
Which is something you don't want to be doing in bad weather.
Not really in the choppy seas that we were surrounded by. So I have to say, it wasn't our best holiday.
So where would you suggest people go to find this diversity?
Well, it depends what people want, really. I mean, we like to think we've got something for everybody. Most overseas visitors probably wouldn't think of England as the obvious place for a beach holiday. But if you think about it, we are an island and there are hundreds of miles of coast, staggeringly beautiful coastline. And for families, I suppose we can't do better than Cornwall, really, in the southwest of England. You can get surfing, lots of water sports, really good for family holidays, as are the Norfolk Broads, which is in the east of England. You could hire a boat, meander through more than 125 miles of waterways, passing the most peaceful countryside. And if you're into getting away from it all and climbing and hiking, then go to the Lake District. That's a place of breathtaking scenery. If you're into quaint villages and rolling countryside, you're really spoilt for choice. Go to Northumberland or the Cotswolds. You can really escape the masses and at the same time see fantastically picturesque villages with typical thatched cottages and, of course, the traditional country pubs. Wonderful place to go.
And, of course, England is steeped in history.
Yeah, if it's history you're after, then again you're spoilt for choice. There are lots of historic towns other than London. For example, there's York, dating back to before Roman times. Walled city, tiny cobbled streets, a delight really. And then York Minster is a fine example of Gothic architecture. In fact, it's Europe's second largest Gothic cathedral. And if you happen to be there on a Sunday, well, you're really in for a treat because the magnificent bells ring out all over the city. I mean, it's fantastic. If you're into nightlife, or if you're what we call a culture vulture, then, well, any of the cities really. Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds. There's a wealth of music venues, clubs, museums, galleries, theatres. There are really many, many vibrant cities in England, and all of them, of course, are very, very cosmopolitan. As is the food, actually. We get a lot of stick for our awful English food, but really, if eating out is one of your pleasures, then every imaginable style of cuisine is available in England. No longer are we the country of fish and chips. The most common food we eat these days is curry. As I said, a country of great diversity.
Have you heard of imposter syndrome? No, it's not someone trying to steal your identity. It's the nagging feeling that even though to everyone else you are supremely successful and capable, inwardly you are convinced that you're just bluffing your way through and that at any moment now you'll be found out. Sound familiar? I interviewed people about the latest syndrome to hit the psychiatrist's couch. Valerie, had you heard of imposter syndrome before?
Yes, I had actually. It's interesting because you read a few sort of biographies of famous people, and a lot of them will start talking about it. But I didn't actually put those words to it, but I understand what it's about, and I feel that perhaps I'm a bit of a sufferer.
And your profession is?
I am a garden designer.
Right.
But I've come late to that. I used to be a teacher. And I think having come late to something, you kind of feel a bit more of an imposter because you've lived so long as a teacher. You can't possibly be a real garden designer.
Right.
Because I think the more you learn about something, the more you know that you don't know. So, of course, your confidence begins. You're sort of not totally confident.
So do you think that your clients are going to sort of rumble to the fact that you sense this within yourself, or?
Well, I don't think they do, because I think years of teaching have taught me that I can overcome that, but I do feel it inside.
And did you have it when you were a teacher?
Yes. I think I'm the sort of person, it doesn't matter what I do, I'll always feel I don't know it all, and I will be, somebody's going to catch me out one day.
Richard, had you heard of the term imposter syndrome before?
No, I hadn't, not until you explained it to me.
And do you think you've personally had experience of it?
Oh, no, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's not something I recognise.
And what, in fact, do you do for a living?
I'm a cameraman. I work in television.
So you have all these directors and producers expecting rather wonderful images from you, and in general you feel quite self-assured that you can give them what they need?
Well, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I think I'm good enough that most of the time when I make a mistake, only I realise I've made one.
I see. And in the media in general, do you think there are people out there who have this sort of nagging self-doubt?
No, I don't think so. The media's famously full of probably overly self-confident people. No, nobody likes to show any doubt in the media.
Miranda, had you heard of imposter syndrome before?
Well, I hadn't, and then I kind of put the idea of imposter and syndrome, and then I read about it and thought, well, actually, I feel a little bit like an imposter because I've been incredibly lucky. I've had an enormous amount of good fortune in being given this privilege of having a place at this wonderful university and a fully funded PhD,
Wow.
which is not only fully funded for all my fees, but I'm also being paid to travel the world to go and collect my data. So how could this happen? How could this happen to me? And when I go and see my supervisor, I keep thinking that he's going to say, I'm sorry, Miranda, but actually it was all a trick. It really wasn't what you thought it was. And we found out that you're not who you say you are.
What do you do then, Rachel, to cheer yourself up?
Well, when I'm feeling really down about things and maybe feeling a little bit lonely or anything, especially when you've just moved to a new place, I've kept all the letters that people have sent me over the years, and photographs, and just odd loose photographs and tickets from plays and concerts that I've been to in lots of shoe boxes marked with the year when I did those things. And sometimes I'll open one of those and go through things, and it kind of reminds me that the friends that I've had and the good times I've had, and that there will be some more to come.
That's lovely. That's
what about
really
you?
Nice. Well, to be honest, sometimes I do that as well. I have some lovely photos of when I've travelled, and it's lovely to look at them. But then it always makes me think,
I haven't seen these people for ages. I want to see them. And then I start planning something sociable to do or something fun. So actually, it really does take you out of your down moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, because sometimes you get too stuck in the moment that you're actually in and you forget, you lose perspective. So I think that gives me a bit more perspective.
So what's your preferred pick-me-up then, Alex?
Oh, it's always been perfume, ever since my grandmother let me play with a beautiful Art Deco glass and silver atomizer that she had. It smelt of violets. It was wonderful. And I've always found that perfume seems to go straight into my brain and lifts my mood. And I can choose perfume to suit the occasion. And of course, I can do it any time I like. What about you? What do you do?
Well, I need some kind of physical release, really. I really like going for a really fast bike ride at top speed with the wind whistling in my ears. It's impossible to feel stressed when you're zipping around like that.
I suppose that's true.
So, Ian, how do you cope when you're feeling a bit down?
Well, I have a couple of tricks, really. If I just need cheering up, I like to go kite flying because it's just great fun and it's colourful and it's quiet and peaceful and I'm on my own. But if something is threatening to get a little bit too serious, that it's perhaps bothering me more than it really should, then I try to be cynical about it to get it in context.
Oh, right.
And I think about what I do when I'm cynical, and when I'm cynical about something, I raise one eyebrow. So I find that if I just raise an eyebrow and thinking about something, it brings out the cynicism and it all goes away. How about you?
Well, generally, if I'm not feeling too happy, then I need something to work towards. So I try and make contact with friends that I don't really see very often, and I find that if I'm with them, then I kind of forget about what's going on at the time and just remember the things I used to do with them, and they just kind of accept my personality, so I don't have to that trivial thing that's usually making me not very happy doesn't really mean very much to them. So
yeah, good memories always help.
Exactly.
So what were you watching on telly last night, Sue?
Oh, it's Big Brother, you know I like that.
Oh, reality TV. It's just everywhere you look on the television, reality TV is rubbish.
It's just relaxation. Sometimes you just want to put your feet up and let it wash over you.
It's not, it's intellectually bankrupt and it's just rubbish.
Well, I think it's fun, and actually sometimes you need to keep in touch with the youth of today, don't you? And they like this sort of thing, so reality TV is fine by me.
Well, it's a sad indictment on society, frankly.
Well, it's fun to see people outside their normal environment testing themselves.
But they're not, though, are they? They're not.
Why not?
It's a tired template that's been used, that's provocative. It's there to create conflict. It's to see the worst in people. It's poking fun at people, at their misery.
Well, they know what they're letting themselves in for. What's the problem?
More for them, frankly. Most of them are trying to get fame a shortcut way.
What would you rather watch then?
Well, I'd like to watch more sport and more comedy, frankly.
There's enough sport on TV as it is. It's on all the time. What about some costume drama?
Oh, that's a bit dull, though, isn't it? It's a bit
you
heavy.
say you want to be intellectually stimulated by the television. That's exactly what you want.
No, actually, what I want is some good comedy for me to relax.
See?
And
Relaxing.
laugh.
Just like reality TV.
No. Something that involves creativity, something that's innovative, something that makes you laugh. That's not reality TV. Reality TV, as I said, it's poking fun.
Well, each to their own.
We didn't know our ideas were going to be successful. In the original series, nothing was based on scientific research. We just made it all up. Little did we know these gadgets were going to inspire a generation of young Earthlings. And some of these young fans would go on to spend their lives trying to turn Star Trek fantasy into their reality. Years later, we were to find out that many of the inventors in Silicon Valley had been Star Trek fans as kids. All these geeks in the 1960s decided they were actually going to make personal computers like those that Spock used, and that included pocket or palm computers. But it wouldn't happen overnight. We didn't realize that these bits of cardboard and plastic being used on set were about to be transformed into everyday modern technology.
Could you tell us, Andrew, is there still a difference between the tabloid newspapers and the so-called quality press in Britain?
Oh yeah, there's a huge difference. I mean, physically you'll see the difference straight away because a tabloid paper is smaller. The so-called quality press, otherwise known as broadsheets or the heavies, have up to now tended to be bigger. Recently, because of the problems people have had, say, on trains, on buses, opening newspapers that are too big, they've become smaller. The Times, for example, has gone into a tabloid format, but the tone of the paper hasn't changed. They still use more serious language. They still use smaller headlines. They still present the news in a more sober kind of fashion. Whereas a tabloid newspaper tends to shout at you a bit more, tends to direct your eyes more across the page. Huge pictures, huge headlines. It tells you what to think and how to react. Also, the tabloid papers tend to have a much bigger circulation. They sell in the millions, whereas the broadsheets sell in the hundreds of thousands, and that's a sort of reflection of the kind of of the way society breaks up, of the way society is constructed. The more intellectual end of the newspaper market they maybe sell between 300,000-400,000 and 800,000, and the biggest selling papers sell about 3 million, and they're the furthest down market.
Can you tell us, Andrew, what kind of stories really sell newspapers?
Well, it depends what newspaper you're talking about. You have to, as a journalist, think about who's reading your paper when you're deciding how to prioritise your stories. The broadsheet newspapers tend to focus on the more serious stories. Political stories especially are a great favourite for them to lead on. If you go right to the other end of the market with the down market, so-called red top tabloids, they like TV stories, they like stories about film stars, they like stories about royals, they like crime stories, something with a much sort of brasher, instant appeal. Our newspaper, the paper I work for, is somewhere in the middle of the market, so sometimes we'll splash. The splash is the main story on the front page. That's a term that journalists use. Sometimes we'll decide that the splash should be a political story, sometimes a crime story. We like family stories. We like stories that relate to the kind of people that are buying our paper, the middle-class families that we think are at the heart of our circulation.
Clearly, the stories in different sorts of newspaper are written in different ways. Could you explain to us how the journalists know what kind of language to use?
As I mentioned earlier, the pictures are bigger, the headlines are bigger. But what you find when you get to read the actual story is that the language in a tabloid newspaper tends to be snappier, shorter words, shorter, crisper sentences. What we call a sort of crash bang wallop style, a sort of straight to the point, without any elaboration, without any flamboyant sentences, without words that are too long. Most paragraphs, if you look at a tabloid newspaper, most paragraphs are about 20 words. Very few paragraphs are longer than 30, and some are as short as about 10. It means that the story is easier to read. It has a faster pace. It's more in tune with the kind of audience, with the kind of readership that the paper has. And if you read a story from a heavy paper, the paragraphs will be much longer to look at on the page and much harder work to get through. So that's a really discernible difference.
Could you describe for us the process of deciding on the story for the front page of a newspaper?
Yes, I mean, this is probably the most exciting part of the job, deciding what the best story of the day is and how to present it. Every reporter wants to get his or her story on the front page, so they'll be trying their hardest to convince the news editor of the paper that theirs is the best story and that's where it should go. So reporters are trying their best to get everything they can out of a story, to write it in the most exciting and accessible way, and then the news editor himself will try to convince the editor that that's where the story should go.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
When you go to the cinema or watch telly and see all the people in crowd scenes, the chances are you never give them a second's thought. And yet for many people, this is their job. They're extras, like Daniel and Kate, who are with us today. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. Daniel, what makes people like yourself want to be an extra?
Good question. Well, I guess I've always been keen on amateur dramatics, and so I suppose it's a way of keeping in contact with the acting world. Luckily, the working hours for my normal job are quite flexible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. You never know when you'll be needed on set.
I suppose there's a lot of hanging around.
Yeah, they're long hours. But I have no problems amusing myself. I'm a writer, so I always take my laptop with me and, well, just get on with my work.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've appeared in some big films, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's it like seeing yourself on the big screen?
Well, half the time I can't even spot myself, well, unless I really concentrate. But I'm usually in crowd scenes as a wedding guest or a person in the street, you know, that kind of thing.
Are there ever jobs when you are more than just a face in a crowd?
I get given short scenes from time to time when I'm a postman or a taxi driver or whatever. Sometimes I have to react to what someone says. I mean, you often find that you've been edited out later, which can be disappointing, but it makes a change and you get paid more, so that's always welcome. The money's not bad at all, really, for what you actually do.
Do you have any hope you'll break into film acting yourself?
Oh, no chance. It would be like being given wings and asked to fly.
Kate, how did you end up being an extra?
Well, I kind of fell into it. I once knew somebody who'd done it, and I thought it would be a way of supplementing my income and enjoying myself at the same time.
You do mostly TV work, don't you?
Yes, lots of soap operas, period dramas and that sort of thing.
And what kind of people become extras?
Oh, all sorts, from young drama students to solicitors on their day off, bored housewives, whoever. We do all share a common interest, so it's a great opportunity for us all to meet and have a chat and a good laugh.
Do you ever get the chance to meet the principal actors?
Well, we're actually actively encouraged not to interact with them. They have a job to do. But we sometimes bump into them on set. The stars themselves are quite friendly on the whole. It's the minor actors who tend to be a bit standoffish.
Uh-huh. And are you treated well in general?
Mostly. I think the money is reasonable. There's a lot of standing around, though, and there are times when you feel very tired.
Is there a lot of stress on the set?
If there are delays, nerves do get frayed, as there's a sense that time and money is draining away. We aren't really affected, though. We're not important enough.
Are there any rules about how you treat the actors?
Not really, other than it's understood you let the crew and principals help themselves first in the canteen at lunchtime. But that's fair enough. It's common sense. They need to get back to work.
Right. And do you enjoy it?
I like the job itself, although the unpredictable hours can be a bit of a pain.
What do you like about it?
It's good being able to dip in and out of different worlds. Like last week I was in a fire on an 18th century ship and...
Daniel, what makes people like yourself want to be an extra?
Good question. Well, I guess I've always been keen on amateur dramatics, and so I suppose it's a way of keeping in contact with the acting world. Luckily, the working hours for my normal job are quite flexible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. You never know when you'll be needed on set.
I suppose there's a lot of hanging around.
Yeah, they're long hours. But I have no problems amusing myself. I'm a writer, so I always take my laptop with me and, well, just get on with my work.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've appeared in some big films, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's it like seeing yourself on the big screen?
Well, half the time I can't even spot myself, well, unless I really concentrate. But I'm usually in crowd scenes as a wedding guest or a person in the street, you know, that kind of thing.
Are there ever jobs when you are more than just a face in a crowd?
I get given short scenes from time to time when I'm a postman or a taxi driver or whatever. Sometimes I have to react to what someone says. I mean, you often find that you've been edited out later, which can be disappointing, but it makes a change and you get paid more, so that's always welcome. The money's not bad at all, really, for what you actually do.
Do you have any hope you'll break into film acting yourself?
Oh, no chance. It would be like being given wings and asked to fly.
Kate, how did you end up being an extra?
Well, I kind of fell into it. I once knew somebody who'd done it, and I thought it would be a way of supplementing my income and enjoying myself at the same time.
You do mostly TV work, don't you?
Yes, lots of soap operas, period dramas and that sort of thing.
And what kind of people become extras?
Oh, all sorts, from young drama students to solicitors on their day off, bored housewives, whoever. We do all share a common interest, so it's a great opportunity for us all to meet and have a chat and a good laugh.
Do you ever get the chance to meet the principal actors?
Well, we're actually actively encouraged not to interact with them. They have a job to do. But we sometimes bump into them on set. The stars themselves are quite friendly on the whole. It's the minor actors who tend to be a bit standoffish.
And are you treated well in general?
Mostly. I think the money is reasonable. There's a lot of standing around, though, and there are times when you feel very tired.
Is there a lot of stress on the set?
If there are delays, nerves do get frayed, as there's a sense that time and money is draining away. We aren't really affected, though. We're not important enough.
Are there any rules about how you treat the actors?
Not really, other than it's understood you let the crew and principals help themselves first in the canteen at lunchtime. But that's fair enough. It's common sense. They need to get back to work.
Right. And do you enjoy it?
I like the job itself, although the unpredictable hours can be a bit of a pain.
What do you like about it?
It's good being able to dip in and out of different worlds. Like last week I was in a fire on an 18th century ship and...
Good morning. With us in the studio today are 3 young people about to leave sixth form college. We talked to them about the difficult choices they have to make as they decide which university course to follow or which job to go into. So, Claire, do you know what you want to do when you leave college?
Not really. It's something that I've struggled with for a long time, what I want to do with my life. The problem these days is there's so many possibilities out there, so many opportunities. And I think it's quite hard for people to decide and to find out what the real world, the real working world is like.
So how are you trying to come to a decision?
Well, recently I've been trying to do lots of work experience in lots of different fields and talk to people in those different areas to try and gain an insight. I've looked into teaching, publishing, I've done some charity work. So just basically trying to gain some experience.
Is this working?
Yes and no. I've certainly found some things that I don't want to do. And I've really enjoyed doing some work experience in a small publishing firm. So I'm thinking about that.
So, Will, you're taking a gap year before going to university. Was that an easy decision to take?
Not really. I had, when I finished my GCSEs, I didn't know really what I wanted to do for A-level, let alone at university. So I kind of I chose 4 subjects that I enjoyed for A-level and then chose to have a gap year because I thought that would give me an extra year to work out what I wanted to do. And I just wanted a gap year to have a bit of time out, really, because things have been a lot of pressure for a lot of years, so I wanted to take the time out to work out completely what I wanted to do.
And do you think you'll be using this year to look at your options?
Absolutely. I've now found a place at university to do sports science, so I'm really glad I've got that sorted in the end.
So, Charlie, do you know what you want to do when you leave college?
I do now. I want to do law at university and I've applied and luckily got a place. But that decision came after a lot of change with me because I wanted to do English originally after GCSE, but after my A-level in English, it was a much bigger step up from English at GCSE. Very different course than what I thought it would be. And I felt a little bit out of my depth. And I looked around universities thinking of doing English and it didn't click, it didn't feel right. And that's when I thought law is what I want to do.
And you're confident in your choice now?
Yeah, this feels a lot better and more right with me than English did. I've done a lot of research into it. I've gone to places like the Old Bailey in London and looked at law cases, and I found it very interesting. I've gone on law courses, and yeah, it's a bit daunting, but it definitely feels right.
Oh, it's totally ludicrous, isn't it, really? I mean, the salaries these company directors and corporate lawyers and financial people in the city get paid, don't you think? I mean, it's completely out of proportion to what they actually do, for one thing.
Yeah, not to mention the astronomical sum that footballers and film stars and so on get, too.
Yeah.
I suppose it's all about market forces. But it does seem very unfair.
Well, it is. You know, when you consider that someone like a nurse or an ambulance driver gets paid a pittance, relatively, for what they do. And I mean, how could we get along without them? And what about all these jobs nobody wants to do but have to be done?
Can you imagine having to clean the streets or collect the rubbish or...
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. I mean, God, they're horrible jobs. So what I think is that anyone who has really, a hard job should expect to get paid well for it. You look dubious, Liz.
Well, it's a difficult one because, historically people expect to get paid less if they've got no qualifications.
But how come, though? Is it their fault if they're no good at exams, or financially they couldn't afford higher education, or if,
Yeah, no, of course not. But I don't understand how it would work in practice, because...
Does what job you have matter that much anyway? I mean, there's a whole world out there beyond work. It's only a means to an end, so you can eat and stuff,
For you, maybe. But for some people, it's the be-all and end-all to earn a lot and get on.
Yeah, but surely it's an interesting job that's the main thing, not...
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. But all I'm saying is many other people, for them, their job is the main thing in their life. It's how they define themselves.
Well, they're saddos, if you ask me. They should get a life, find some interests. Well, that's why people get so stressed out and have to take so much time off work. Because they work too hard and get things out of proportion.
But for some people, they love their work. And anyway, when you're young, if you want to get on, you have to
climb the career ladder. Whoopee!
Hang on, carry on, Liz, you were saying.
Well, you have to work long hours and put a lot in, or people think that you... Well, they won't give you promotion.
Well, so what?
You say that now, but wait until you want a nice house or a flash car or...
Excuse me? It was you saying that what mattered was interest.
Anyway, assuming you do want promotion, you usually have... What I do feel strongly about is that employers make provision for working mothers.
By provision, you mean?
Well, for example, so they can have flexibility. So if they have to drop kids off at school, or if one of them is ill, they can work at home, or if
and allow more women to work part-time or job share.
Or men, of course.
Oh, yeah, right. How many men do you know who work part-time so that they can look after the kids?
You've got me there. Yeah. Well, perhaps they would if it was more accepted.
Well, that's just what I was going to say. It's a kind of chicken and egg situation. Until employers offer people more flexible hours, parents, mothers really, are stuck because they feel guilty working full-time but need to work for whatever reason, and often they have no choice anyway. They need the money.
The problem is... people with no kids might turn round and say, well, why should we cover for you? It's your choice to have children. And they might resent it if working mothers...
Or fathers.
Or fathers have special treatment.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, after all, as a society, we're all responsible for the future generation, aren't we? But it'd certainly be a hassle for employers to organise.
Which is why it would have to be law that they did it. After all, if they...
Oh, it's totally ludicrous, isn't it, really? I mean, the salaries these company directors and corporate lawyers and financial people in the city get paid, don't you think? I mean, it's completely out of proportion to what they actually do, for one thing.
Not to mention the astronomical sum that footballers and film stars and so on get, too.
Yeah.
I suppose it's all about market forces. But it does seem very unfair.
Well, it is. You know, when you consider that someone like a nurse or an ambulance driver gets paid a pittance, relatively, you know, for what they do. And I mean, how could we get along without them? And what about all these jobs nobody wants to do but have to be done?
Can you imagine having to clean the streets or collect the rubbish or...
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. I mean, God, they're horrible jobs. So what I think is that anyone who has really, you know, a hard job should expect to get paid well for it. You look dubious, Liz.
Well, it's a difficult one because, well, historically people expect to get paid less if they've got no qualifications.
But how come, though? Is it their fault if they're no good at exams, or financially they couldn't afford higher education, or if, you know...
Yeah, no, of course not. But well, I don't understand how it would work in practice, because...
Does what job you have matter that much anyway? I mean, there's a whole world out there beyond work. It's only a means to an end, so you can eat and stuff, you know.
For you, maybe. But for some people, it's the be-all and end-all to earn a lot and get on.
Yeah, but surely it's an interesting job that's the main thing, not...
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. But all I'm saying is many other people, for them, their job is the main thing in their life. It's how they define themselves.
Well, they're saddos, if you ask me. They should get a life, find some interests. Well, that's why people get so stressed out and have to take so much time off work. Because they work too hard and get things out of proportion.
But for some people, they love their work. And anyway, when you're young, if you want to get on, you know, you have to put...
Climb the career ladder. Whoopee!
Hang on, carry on, Liz, you were saying.
Well, you have to work long hours and put a lot in, or people think that you... Well, you know, they won't give you promotion.
Well, so what?
You say that now, but wait until you want a nice house or a flash car or...
Excuse me? It was you saying that what mattered was interest.
Anyway, assuming you do want promotion, you usually have... What I do feel strongly about is that employers make provision for working mothers.
By provision, you mean?
Well, for example, so they can have flexibility. So if they have to drop kids off at school, or if one of them is ill, they can work at home, or if
and allow more women to work part-time or job share.
Or men, of course.
Oh, yeah, right. How many men do you know who work part-time so that they can look after the kids?
You've got me there.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps they would if it was more accepted.
Well, that's just what I was going to say. It's a kind of chicken and egg situation. Until employers offer people more flexible hours, parents, well, mothers really, are stuck because they feel guilty working full-time but need to work for whatever reason. And, well, often they have no choice anyway. They need the money.
The problem is... people with no kids might turn round and say, well, why should we cover for you? It's your choice to have children. And they might resent it if working mothers...
Or fathers.
Or fathers have special treatment.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, after all, as a society, we're all responsible for the future generation, aren't we? But it'd certainly be a hassle for employers to organise.
Which is why it would have to be law that they did it. After all, if they...
So, Teresa, you must be happy that your exhibition is opening next week.
In some ways, yes, I am. It's great to see the result of all my months of painting. But at this stage, I don't know how people will respond to my work. The critics have always been enthusiastic about it, but until I see it hanging up and being enjoyed by others, then I'm stressed. This exhibition might be compared unfavourably with my previous ones, and if that happens, it's tempting to think that people have lost their judgment. But
Being a painter is a very insecure way of earning a living, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, I'm now quite well known and I earn a living from it, but for many painters it's not like that. It's hard to get yourself recognised in the art world. We've all had to work out our own individual ways of reaching our goals and have all had to give up going to restaurants or having holidays. But not to paint would be unthinkable.
I'm glad we're both going to university. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, me too. I mean, university is about people as well as what you learn there, isn't it? It gives you opportunities you'd never have otherwise, and with a bit of luck you come out with a better understanding of what you want in life and who you are. I really want to do medicine, but whether I turn out to be a surgeon like my father remains to be seen.
How long's your course?
5 years, but then I have to do a year of postgraduate training before I'm a registered doctor. The cost of it all will be pretty massive, but it's an investment. I know it's what I want to do, so I'm prepared to put everything into it. Everyone's told me it's intense, and you don't have much time to socialise, at least at the beginning, which might not be that much fun.
Sounds a bit scary to me.
First of all, let me tell you a bit about myself and how I became a pilot. Well, I've had a varied career, but my present job as a commercial airline pilot is the best one I've had. I fly passengers and cargo all round the world and see some amazing places. Being a pilot requires a great deal of technical knowledge, and I've always been fascinated by engines. In fact, that's what made me go for this job. That and the fact that I knew I had to make a decision about my working life. I'd been a secretary, a waitress, and finally a fitness instructor, which I enjoyed, but just wasn't very exciting. So I began to explore the idea of becoming a pilot. The more I thought about it, the keener I was to do it and get started on the training. Some of the theoretical bits of the flying exams I was able to do through a mixture of distance learning and classroom-based courses at a flying school in Scotland. And obviously I had to build up my flying hours in order to get my licence. I work for a large airline that does both short and long-haul flights. The advantage of flying to somewhere far away means that you get 2 days there to look around and recover before flying back to Heathrow Airport, where we're based. And for me, that's much better. Even though if you're only flying from Heathrow to Madrid and back, you can be home and sleeping in your own bed the same night. Before a flight, I need to be at Heathrow at least 90 minutes before takeoff, as there are a series of things we need to do on the ground before boarding the plane 45 minutes before departure. With my first officer, I check the flight plan and make sure there aren't any changes to normal procedure. One thing we can never be sure of course, is the weather. Naturally, we have to take it into account before takeoff. There's often time to chat with the guys on the flight deck when we're up at cruising height. I know them all quite well now. Unlike me, they all have families, so the conversation is usually about them. I must say, crew catering is not exciting. We often don't get what the passengers get, and I don't eat the same food as my co-pilot, just in case. Up in the air, we constantly have to monitor all the instruments, and we have to be prepared to alter course if necessary. It's inevitable that on some flights we will encounter turbulence, which passengers can find alarming. But it's not necessarily anything to worry about. Storms, on the other hand, can be very hazardous, and we keep away from them. Then, when we arrive at our destination...
I have a friend called Martina, and she owns 2 rabbits. Not so strange in itself, but she's got the habit of taking them everywhere she goes. So a typical afternoon around a friend's house will consist of people crawling around in the neighbours' hedges looking for them. And then there's the chicken wire over her bookcases to stop the rabbits eating her books. And the thing that I'll never forget is the first time I met her. She came to the pub, dressed very glamorously, long coat and high heels, opened her coat, and there, popping out of her top of her sweater, were the 2 rabbits.
Really? Blimey. I commute on the train to work every day, and on the way back home, there's a guy that gets on the train, and he starts at one end of the platform. He hops on the train at the back end, and he patrols all the way up the carriages through to the front of the train, and then patrols back again until he finds the perfect seat
I guess that's what he's looking for. I mean, I've been travelling for 2 years now, and I've sort
He's
of...
not a ticket inspector then?
No, he's not a ticket
Undercover.
inspector. He's, he does the same thing day in, day out, and the only thing that I can put it down to is that he's just trying to find the best seat on the train. I thought that was quite bizarre. And
Very bizarre. I used to commute to Liverpool Street for 10 years, and you've just reminded me, actually, there was a couple who used to get on at King's Lynn and go all the way down to Liverpool Street. And the woman had extraordinary eyebrows that were painted on with very, very heavy eyebrow pencil. But they used to have a bag of toy animals, stuff, children's toys.
Oh,
And they
okay.
used to get them out and line them up. I've only just remembered
That's
this.
very strange.
And they used to line them up so that the toys could look out of the window.
that is very, very bizarre.
Very odd behaviour.
We all used to sit there just ignoring them. And nobody, because we're British, nobody would say anything.
No.
Why are you lining up all these toys? You're a grown-up couple.
Gosh.
My daughter does that, but she's 6, so I think it's more understandable.
Well, yeah, quite.
But she does strange things. I mean, she collects pebbles, which really winds us up because she's just got this really nice coat, and she always she comes home from school and she's always got pockets and pockets full of pebbles, grubby pebbles that just make holes in the pockets and so on. You take, help her off with her coat, and it's so heavy. Full of stuff. We empty them every day. We've got this great heap of pebbles in the garden.
Oh.
She collects them with
Be
her
able to
friends.
make a path one day.
She collects them with her friends, I think, and sort of compare them. And the other thing, actually, recently she went for a week and she insisted on putting on odd socks every morning.
Really?
Yeah, she wanted to put on different colour socks. It's obviously the height of fashion
Oh,
in her
wow.
class
Sweet
at
though,
school.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked in advertising and marketing for about 25 years, mostly on the copywriting side. So when we've come to plan campaigns, I've always been thinking about the words more than anything else. And I was particularly impressed, it's a few years back now, but particularly impressed with the Coca-Cola campaign, which focused on the words, "It's the real thing." At the time when it came out, I wondered how this would work, but they used that phrase across TV advertising, billboards, on commercial radio. And I was particularly impressed, as I say, by the campaign because of the words, "It's the real thing." The word "it's" just implies that's part of everyday life. Coca-Cola, you don't have to use the name in the actual slogan or the strapline they're using. Then you have the real thing. The real implying, well, it's genuine, it's the real article. It's not, of course, their main opposition, Pepsi-Cola. It's maybe even suggests it's healthy and good for you. So the real thing. And then the thing, well, an everyday item, something that's part of your life. I just felt this worked so well. And people would say it's the real thing, and you just thought of Coca-Cola. You didn't need to say Coca-Cola, the real thing. You just thought of the product when you saw the strapline or the phrase. And that did work for a number of years. And I think there's still a lot of people around, if you say to them, it's the real thing, they will think Coca-Cola. They won't think about anything else, even though that's a phrase, of course, is used generally in society and in language, in an everyday kind of way.
Recording 6.3.
A successful advertising campaign that springs to my mind are the iPod ads that have been around for a few years now. I'm thinking particularly of the ones where you've got the dark silhouette of a young, probably attractive, really trendy urban person who's listening to some great funky music and they're throwing themselves around, really enjoying themselves. And it's set against a really vivid background, kind of bright purple, bright blue, almost neon. And they've got the iPod in their hands with the white earphones going into their ears. And I think the thing with the iPod is that it's really a design icon. It's such a simple design, but it's something that people recognise almost instantly. If you see someone wearing the earphones walking around the street, then you know what product they have. And I think the adverts really complement this because they show a lifestyle. They don't actually give any information about the product itself. It's more an image that people want. They want the product, they want this lifestyle. And, I love my iPod, and for me, I may not be that young anymore, but, I want that kind of fashionable lifestyle and this wonderful fashion accessory. And I think advertising campaigners in the future will probably look at this as a really good, simple, effective advert that people remember, and they'll use design in the future to promote their own products.
A good story has to have several standard components. It's got to have a beginning, it's got to have a middle, and it's got to have an end. And the way that works is you have something that sets the story in its situation and context, and you can call that the premise. And the character is speaking, or the narrator is telling you about the character. And then someone else maybe comes in, and the situation gets complicated. This is known as the development. And whatever then happens makes the story even more interesting. That's a complication. And then something gets sorted out and you have the ending, the resolution. And these elements can be mixed up in any length and shape. And a joke can be a story, or a narrative can be a story, or just someone telling something that happened to them that morning can be a story. Anything can be a story. But if you're putting it on the radio, it needs to hook the listener in straight away. So you've got to have something to catch their attention. And that is where the interest is struck up. And you've got to maintain the interest, build up the tension until somewhere along the line the reader is ready for the story to come to an ending. Positive, negative, happy ending, sad ending, or even a laugh. Because a joke is a story as well.
Are you James? He asked. I nodded uncertainly. Kirsty asked me to give you a lift. She's at another place. I tried to be cool about this turn of events. Sure, it was unusual that Mr. Universe's better-built brother was chauffeuring me to a date with Miss World's better-looking sister, but I wouldn't let it ruin what I hoped would be the start of something special. Finally, we arrived at some expensive-looking building in the mountains. Kirsty was outside, waving to me. Quick, James, go through there! I protested, but she frowned, shooing me along. There's no time! I found myself in a large room filled with rows of chairs. Only about half were occupied, mainly by middle-aged couples. It took me a full 10 minutes to realise where I was. Me at a timeshare presentation. Do I really look the sort of person who would buy a share in a holiday home overseas? Humiliated, I stormed out. Kirsty was waiting and dashed after me. We're miles away from anywhere. Please, give us a chance, she cajoled. We can go for a meal afterwards. I'll call a taxi, I said. You won't get one. I can take you back, but only when the presentation is over. Then I'll walk. It took me 6 hours. I swear I intended to confess all to my mates, but I couldn't face telling them the truth. The next day we were back in the same club again when Mike nudged me. Here comes your missus. Kirsty was indeed walking very determinedly towards me. Horrified, I leapt up to intercept her before she reached our table. I need a sale, James, and I need it today. Sorry, I just don't have that sort of money. It's only a £200 deposit. The lads were watching us like hawks, trying to work out what was going on. Kirsty smiled maliciously. They think we're going out together, don't they? What if I go over now and tell them the truth? No, I blurted out. Please, I'm a student. She started towards them. I capitulated. Okay, I think I can make a withdrawal on my credit card. Her relief made me feel bolder. But first, you have to kiss me. Here, now, I said bravely. She snorted. I raised an eyebrow. I thought you needed that sale, Kirsty. She sighed and then grabbed me. All I remember is my heart thumping and hearing my friends cheering until, after a glorious eternity, the most gorgeous woman I'd ever met came up for air. Right, so now we go to the bank, she hissed, pulling me towards the door. And then we'll go for that meal. My friends looked on in amazement as this beautiful woman dragged me away. Timeshare scams are a thing of the past these days. A bit of a shame, really.
When you're telling a story on the radio, the first and most important thing is to get the listener involved. Get the listener listening, and you do that with various tricks and techniques and pauses and rhythm and stress. And you've got a range of words, adverbs, adjectives, even the verbs, to keep the story moving, to keep it lively. The livelier your choice of words, the more interested the listener is going to be. And you've got to vary the pace, you've got to vary the stress, you've got to build up the tension, perhaps make it scary, or perhaps hold something back to surprise the listener with a twist in the tale if the story is going to go in that direction. The tone of the story is going to be judged by the listener from your tone of voice as you tell the story. So is it going to be gripping and exciting, or is it going to be light and frivolous? Is it going to be serious? Is it going to be scary? What kind of atmosphere do you want to create with your voice and with the range of vocabulary that you are offering in your telling of this story? You've got to make it sound as if it has the elements we mentioned earlier, the beginning, the middle, the end. But you also have to give it a flow to make sure the listener is carried along with your telling of the story, and make sure that the listener enjoys it.
Good morning. In the studio with us today we have Zoe Powell, a freelance science journalist. Zoe has recently been working on a TV documentary in which potential criminals try to outwit a forensic scientist and get away with it. Zoe, I'm sure our listeners would find it very useful to hear how they did it.
Interesting rather than useful, I hope. Well, at one time, if someone committed a crime, you didn't have as much to go on. These days, of course, techniques are much more sophisticated. Recently, for example, there was the famous case when a kidnapping was solved 20 years later, after the seal of an envelope was re-examined and the tiniest trace of dried saliva found there.
So, if the kidnapper hadn't licked the envelope...
he wouldn't be in prison now. Exactly. You have to be so careful not to leave any trace of yourself at all.
Which is easier said than done, presumably, since our DNA is in virtually every cell in our body.
Indeed. If a person doesn't want to leave forensic evidence, they should just slide through a window, because any broken glass, or other damage for that matter, scratch paint, for example, comes in very handy to forensic scientists. One burglar, who was found recently through his DNA, would have got away with it completely if he hadn't been sweating at the time.
And if I were committing a burglary, I'd be better off wearing gloves, of course, so as not to leave fingerprints.
Well, yes, providing you didn't leave fibres behind, as these can also be traced fairly easily. It's the same with socks.
So, best to go barefoot then?
But even the tiniest fragment of skin is enough to match you, so you'd actually be better off covering up as much as possible.
But can't you get round the problem by wearing smooth clothes, like silk?
Absolutely.
No woolly gloves and socks then?
And needless to say, if you're going to burgle a house, you'll obviously try not to draw attention to yourself. Don't stagger out with a huge television or whatever. Do it quietly, and avoid the temptation to rush out and sell whatever you've stolen right away.
And what does a would-be murderer have to bear in mind?
Well, what's similar about most killers is they are cool, detached sort of people. They seem to be able to carry on as if nothing's happened, behaving perfectly normally. In fact, if they weren't such good actors, most of them would probably have been found out much earlier.
So a lot of it comes down to personality.
Yes. And you obviously need a watertight alibi too. And having a few maggots to hand to confuse the scientists might help.
Maggots?
Yes, forensic scientists use creepy crawlies to help them work out the time and place of death. By counting how many maggots are on a body and how mature they are, you can have a pretty good idea of when someone died. Unless the murderer has put them there themselves, of course.
You're joking.
It has been known. And flies are useful too. The kind of place you're in will attract different kinds of flies. So if you found a body in the countryside with urban flies on it, the murder would probably have been committed in the city.
That's incredible.
Then, obviously, you also have to destroy your weapon, or at least get rid of any distinguishing marks.
If you'd used poison, there wouldn't be a weapon as such, would there?
Ah, yes, but the thing with poison is it's actually quite easy to find out where it was obtained and trace it back to the suspect. Actually, the ideal weapon is one which destroys its own evidence.
Such as?
Oh, well, for example, you could use an icicle, which, of course, will then melt.
So if anyone happens to come across a body next to a small puddle of water, you'll know what's happened.
Thankfully, violent crimes are still relatively rare. But should any of your listeners be considering committing a crime, be careful. Scientific advances are making the likelihood of detection more and more probable every day.
Indeed. Anyway, if you tune into our programme tomorrow...
In your opinion, how much state intervention should there be in people's everyday lives?
Well, I think that basically if the state intervenes, for example, to ban smoking from enclosed public places, that's a good idea. It's been proved that passive smoking is harmful for people, and so it's important that the government prevents this. People are free to smoke outside, and so there's no an excessive limit in the liberties. I do agree when smoking is banned from enclosed places, but of course I wouldn't agree if the government ruled that people are not allowed to, for example, to smoke in a public park. That would be definitely too drastic.
In the case of rubbish, there clearly has to be more state intervention because rubbish is piling up and the landfill sites are running out. So we need to do something. Charging for rubbish seems to me a good idea. It is fairer because people pay for what they throw away, and it is also effective.
I also agree with a certain degree of state intervention in areas like health or environmental issues. However, when it comes to the state intervening in people's lifestyles, for example, promoting marriage over other types of partnership, I think it is highly unfair. And, for example, in England, there is a debate going on about tax exemptions for married people, which I think is a terrible example of bias against other partnerships and relationships. This basically means that people who want to benefit from tax exemptions will have to forsake their choice of lifestyle and, for example, get married. I think this is a state intervention gone too far.
Right, Mike. Could we just go over this one more time?
When are you going to realise it's useless to keep grilling me about this? I've told you everything I know. I went round to a friend's, I got back home late, there'd been a break-in and police were swarming all over the flat. End of.
You see, it all strikes me as very odd.
What does?
Well, that it's on that particular night you suddenly take it into your head to go and visit your ex-girlfriend.
So what? Can't people stay friends?
A convenient alibi, though, isn't it? Her living just opposite, right on the doorstep and all.
If you say so.
Anyway, you say you went out at about 7:30. Isn't this about the time George usually goes out? He never stays in on a Friday evening, does he?
How should I know? We're not joined at the hip, you know.
Well, that's not what we've heard. We've heard you're always out together. Anyway, just by chance, that's the night you decided not to go out with him. Isn't that a coincidence? Wouldn't have had anything to do with the £2,000 in cash he'd been paid that day for a building job, by any chance?
How much? Oh, come on, Mike. We weren't born yesterday. You knew he'd stashed it away somewhere. And who else would have known his secret hiding place under the stairs?
You tell me, since you obviously know all the answers.
Anyway, you're still saying that you stayed at Emma's the evening the money was stolen?
Apart from when I nipped out to get a pizza.
I? Right, so you went out on your own, did you?
Is that a crime? Emma had already eaten.
How come? You said she was expecting you.
Dunno, ask her.
And when was it you went out exactly?
Around 8, give or take 5 minutes.
Took the opportunity to go back to your flat, did you?
Are you serious? Why would I want to do that?
Well, that's what we'd like to know. But your neighbour swears she saw you going in around 8:20. Her dog was barking, so she looked to see what was going on.
She would. She's a nosy old bag, and as blind as a bat at the best of times.
So, you're saying you didn't go back?
That's right.
So it's just a coincidence that we found most of a pizza in the bin at your flat, is it?
Must be.
And when you got back to Emma's, what did you do then?
Watch the end of that new soap opera, Hospitals.
Oh, yeah. I saw a bit of that, but I missed the end. What happened?
Well, Emma was going on about something, so I lost track of what was happening.
Stayed late at Emma's, did you?
Quite late. Time flies when you're having fun.
Expensive phone you got there.
It was a present from my mum.
Oh, no fun, is it? Being unemployed, especially for a bright kid like you. Must have hit you hard losing your job. Must be tempting to get money when you can.
Look, you've got nothing on me, and you know it. Why don't you just leave me alone?
Recording 7.6. 1.
Right, Mike. Could we just go over this one more time?
2.
Anyway, you say you went out at about 7:30. Isn't this about the time George usually goes out? He never stays in on a Friday evening, does he?
How should I know? We're not joined at the hip, you know.
Well, that it's on that particular night you suddenly take it into your head to go and visit your ex-girlfriend.
So what? Can't people stay friends?
3.
Well, that's not what we've heard. We've heard you're always out together. Anyway, just by chance, that's the night you decided not to go out with him. Isn't that a coincidence? Wouldn't have had anything to do with the £2,000 in cash he'd been paid that day for a building job, by any chance?
4.
Anyway, you say you went out at about 7:30. Isn't this about the time George usually goes out? He never stays in on a Friday evening, does he?
Recording 7.7. 1.
I haven't got any money on me.
Isn't that a surprise?
2.
So we're meeting at 9, are we?
Yes. Sorry, I've forgotten already. Where are we meeting?
3.
Could you put everything in the dishwasher, please?
Why should I always do it?
4.
Thank goodness it's arrived at last.
What has?
5.
I heard from Terry last night.
Oh, so she finally decided to phone, did she?
6. I believe 200 people are coming to the wedding.
Are you sure?
7.
I need some money.
Oh, you do you?
One person that I think is very inspirational is a woman called Hazel Henderson. And the reason her story has struck me so strongly is because she was an ordinary person who did something extraordinary. She was born before the Second World War, and she had a very typical upbringing for a young girl. She went to school and hated school. Couldn't wait to leave. She left as soon as she could without any qualifications. And she got a job in a local dress shop. She was born in Bristol and brought up in Bristol. And she enjoyed that for a time, but then started to think that the world held other possibilities. So she took a job in a hotel as a receptionist. Enjoyed that. And then realised that because hotels are around the world, she could get a job elsewhere. So she applied for and got a job in New York and enjoyed that very much. And met an American man, fell in love, married, had a family. And one day she noticed that her young child, who would play every day in a local park in New York, was covered in soot. And in fact, it was quite typical that she would come home very dirty, and she'd have to put her in the bath and scrub her to get this dirt off her. So she went to investigate where the soot was coming from and saw that all of the equipment in the playground was covered in soot. And the reason for this was because the quality of the air in New York was so poor from the pollution of the cars, and also there were lots and lots of incinerators that burnt rubbish. So she started to talk to some of the other mothers whose children played in the park, and they also saw this was a problem. But she did some investigating and discovered that the town hall in New York used to measure every day the quality of the air. She'd written to the mayor of New York about pollution in New York, and he said actually the pollution wasn't pollution, it was mist rolling in from the sea. But she didn't take this for the answer. So she did this investigation, and she found that the air was measured. And she asked that this information be made public as part of the daily weather forecast. But she then did some more research and found that there was a federal law about information that, about public health and so on. So she used this to persuade ABC, one of the networks, to take this. Eventually, they agreed because they saw that there was a need, and very soon every media outlet in New York City was carrying this information. And of course, once it started in New York, it travelled across the country to all sorts of other cities, and eventually it travelled around the world. So the daily pollution index that you have in weather forecasts all comes about because of one woman. The great thing about Hazel Henderson is that she didn't stop there. She's an advisor to governments and organisations in 30 countries around the world, and her articles appear regularly in 400 newspapers around the world. So again, this all comes about through one ordinary woman deciding that she wasn't going to put up with what her daughter was experiencing in the local park, and taking it on and deciding to make a real difference.
Today we are looking at emotions, and with me in the studio are our resident scientists, Dr. Aaron Palmer and Dr. Marion Bates. Well, first, Aaron, we hear people refer to basic emotions. What are they exactly?
Well, in the 1970s, Dr. Ekman from the University of California devised a list of 6 basic emotions, which are anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, and surprise.
And are these emotions common to all human beings?
I think it's fair to say most members of the scientific community agree that, yes, basic emotions are universal.
But men don't experience the same emotions as women, do they?
Whoever said that is wrong. All human beings experience the same basic emotions. They may choose to express their emotions differently.
OK. So, can you explain how Ekman arrived at this list?
Well, initially he based his theory on cross-cultural research done on a tribe in Papua New Guinea. It was a completely isolated tribe. They still used stone to make tools and weapons. And Ekman found that the people from this tribe could reliably identify 6 facial expressions of emotion. To do this, he used photographs of people from around the world, and they could identify all the basic emotions from the photographs, even though they'd had absolutely no contact with any other culture before.
Yes. In fact, wherever this experiment was carried out, the results were the same. Whoever saw the photos identified the same emotions. Ekman's discovery showed that the facial expressions associated with these basic emotions are universal. He therefore concluded that humans are born with the ability to recognise them in others.
Of course, our ancestors relied on these basic emotions to stay alive. The survival value of emotions like fear, disgust, and joy are still obvious. Whenever you come across something that frightens you, run away from it. Whenever you come across something that disgusts you, don't eat it. Whatever gives you pleasure, do more of it, etc. But beyond these basic emotions, there are others which are referred to as higher emotions.
And they are?
Well, these are not as well defined as the basic ones, but they include such things as guilt, embarrassment, shame, pride, sympathy. These are emotions which are thought to be confined to, if not humans alone, then to a subset of large-brained mammals, several of whom are related to humans.
So, what do these higher emotions have in common?
Well, with these emotions, it isn't just what the person experiencing the emotion actually feels. For example, in the case of fear, the person's body reacts. The heart starts pumping faster, you might start sweating, etc. Higher emotions, on the other hand, are triggered by what other people might be thinking about you.
Can you give an example?
OK. Well, let's take embarrassment. And let's take a situation like, say, spilling coffee all over yourself. Now, whenever you do this in private, say in your own kitchen, and however many times you do it, it's unlikely to cause embarrassment. But if you spilt coffee all over yourself in a very public place, you might well feel embarrassed.
So you're saying there isn't embarrassment in the act itself, but in what others might think of you?
Yes, exactly. And that's the difference between higher and basic emotions.
OK. I can see that with embarrassment, but is it the same with guilt or pride? Do we only feel guilty or proud when someone else witnesses the act?
Well, actually, no, that's a very...
He'll be pleased if I phone to ask him how he is. It will make me look considerate, and he likes considerate people. He'll be reassured to see that I haven't lost interest, which might make him happy, and then I'll have done him a favour. If I phone him right now, I'll get to speak to him sooner than I will if I sit around waiting for him to phone me. He might not want to phone me from work in case someone hears him and begins, or continues, to suspect that there's something between us. If I want to, and don't, aren't I being a bit immature? We're both adults. Does it matter with adults who makes the first move? But there's always the chance he'll back off if I come on too strong. The less keen I appear, the more keen he's likely to be. And I phoned him twice on Thursday, and once on Friday. He must therefore be fully aware that it's his turn, not mine. If I make it too easy for him, he'll assume I'm too easy. While if I make no effort, that leaves him with more of a challenge. I should demonstrate that I have a sense of proportion. His work must come first for a while, and I shouldn't mind waiting. For all I know, he could have gone off me already, and if I don't phone, I can always say later that I went off him first.
Recording 8.4.
Do you think that being a man or a woman has ever stopped you from doing something you wanted to do? And if you could live your life again as a man or a woman, which would you choose and why?
M.
So far in my life, being a woman hasn't stopped me doing anything that I've wanted to do. An experience that springs to mind was when my boyfriend and I were travelling around Italy and we ran out of money. So we needed to find work. And we found work on a building site. So Toby was building and I was Toby's labourer. And that's not a typical role for a woman, but it was a really good experience. If I could live my life again, I would definitely come back as a woman. For the simple fact that I've really thoroughly enjoyed my life so far, and I hope it carries on to be as much fun as it already has been as a woman.
Bob.
I've never really thought about it. Everything I've sort of wanted to do has always been from a male perspective, so I don't know any other way of behaving other than being a man. Know all the things like sports and work and that I've never had any problems with. It's all flowed probably from being, well, a man, I guess. So, no, I don't think it's hindered me at all. Definitely, I'm happy staying a man. I really enjoy it. But if for a day or two I could come back as a woman, just to gain a greater understanding or empathy, then I could probably do that. As long as I could revert back to being a man at will.
Mick.
Well, yeah, funnily enough, the one thing that I cannot do, and probably will never be able to do unless science progresses far beyond I imagine it will, is give birth. It's something that biologically, obviously, I can't do, and it is something I do think about. I have lots of female friends that have got babies and have given birth and have said that it's the hardest thing, but it's also the most rewarding thing they have ever done in their life. And like I say, it's something that I will never, ever be able to do. In some aspects, I wish I was a seahorse, because seahorses are the only mammal where the male gives birth. But having said all that, if I were to come back, I think I probably still would be a man.
Well, when I think about my childhood, I was at a huge disadvantage being a girl because I was brought up in a house of brothers, and I desperately wanted to join in with a football, and I think I would have been really rather good at it. But I wasn't allowed. They wouldn't let me join in ever. And I ended up doing ballet, which of course I wasn't good enough at, but I think I would have been a pretty good footballer one way and another. And I love the game. I really enjoy it. So that would have been a good reason to be a fella. And if I was to live my life again, I think I probably would try it as a male. One reason being that you wouldn't have to queue up in the toilets, and they only have to think of one thing at a time. Men.
It hasn't ever stopped me from doing anything I've wanted to do, but being a woman makes life harder and more complicated in that you're trying to do a job and you're also having to look after your family. And I have definitely seen with women that I work with, trying to juggle those two things can be quite difficult, and it can hold up their careers or make them feel that they're not successful at doing both things at once. I'd quite like to be a man to see what it's like, but I think I'd choose to be a woman because I think women are better communicators and they have richer lives with their friends, and they can have it all really if they work at it.
Being a man has been, a wonderful experience. I've not felt restricted being a man. I felt that actually doors have been open for me, and I've been very conscious of the fact that being a woman at times in this present society has been difficult. If I could live my life again, I don't think I have a particular preference of coming back as male or female. If I think of the answer to that question, would I come back as male or female? I just think yes. I'd come back as male or female. What a wonderful thing.
Money can't buy you happiness is actually a statement I think I would have to agree with. I recognise that we need money. We do need money for our basic needs, but money is not the route to happiness. I think there are other factors that play far more important roles.
I know a lot of people say that, Kate, but then they're thinking of possessions and things. And sure, possessions can't ultimately buy you happiness. But maybe it's the opportunities that having money give you that makes me think that money can buy you happiness. It can buy you time to do the things you want to do. Travel, learn something new, spend time helping people, whatever. So in that way, I think money really can buy you happiness. I'm not saying it always does.
You mean if you don't have to worry about money, that in itself allows you to do some of the things that might contribute towards your happiness. Is that what you're saying, Maureen?
Sure, I think, yeah, you could really become whatever you wanted to be if you had plenty of money. If rich people aren't happy, then I don't have any sympathy for them because they haven't used the opportunity they have to find what it is that would make them happy.
Well, what about things that don't necessarily take a lot of money, but still make you happy? One of the happiest moments in my life was when the football team I played for, we won a cup in the amateur tournament.
And I expect you had a brilliant time.
Yeah. And that happened a few years ago. It was one of the happiest times I've ever had.
Oh.
And I shared it with 12 other people. And it didn't cost us a penny. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, you can't buy that kind of feel-good factor. I mean, it's like what you say, Kate. I know a guy who worked in the city, in the money markets, and he worked all hours, and I mean all hours, just to be able to buy some amazing home entertainment system. That's all he dreamed of. And finally, he got it, and he wasn't any happier.
Yeah, but I wasn't saying that. That's back to possessions. I was saying money can let you do what you want to do, and that could include, giving it away like Bill Gates. You could become a better person, if you like.
As I said earlier, I think we need some money. I would agree with that. Yeah. And not having money can really make you miserable, but...
Yeah, I've been there, worrying about where the next penny comes from. It's no joke. So, yes, money can free you from worries. But the question was, can it buy you happiness? I mean, that's different.
For me, it isn't. And it's like when you say money can't buy you health. Well, that's not true either. You just have to look at how long people live in poor countries. I can't remember where it was, but I recently read about a place where the average life expectancy is 40-something.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
And when they say money can't buy you love, again, I think it can sometimes.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I'd like to have loads of money just to check all this out.
You mean do some research?
Yeah, here.
And now Spotlight, introduced by Kate Conrad.
Back in the early 1960s in Europe, the UK and the US, there were many community-led campaigns against nuclear weapons, and Satish Kumar wanted to be part of this peace movement. So he and a friend planned to leave their native home of India and walk round the world for peace, visiting the heads of state in Moscow, Paris, London and Washington. Before they left India, one of Satish's teachers told them not to take any money with them on their journey. His reason was this. At the end of each day after they had walked 20 or 30 miles, Satish and his friend would be exhausted. And if they had money, they'd look for a restaurant and a bed for the night. If they did this, the teacher said, they wouldn't meet anyone and they wouldn't pass on their message. However, if they had nothing at all, they would be forced to rely on the kindness of strangers, who were bound to ask them why they were making this journey. So the two men, who weren't particularly money-minded anyway, set off without any means of paying for anything whatsoever, which meant their journey was totally unpredictable. And, as we might imagine, their 8,000-mile walk certainly wasn't entirely stress-free. It took Satish and his companion through deserts, mountains, storms, snow and blazing heat. They were thrown into jail in France. They faced a gun in the US. But nothing put them off their mission for peace. In fact, their determination was made even stronger when, on their way to Moscow, they met two women who worked in a tea factory. After Satish explained why they were doing the walk, one of the women gave them 4 small packets of tea, one to be delivered to each of the leaders of the 4 nuclear powers, with this message. When you think you need to press the nuclear button, stop for a minute and have a fresh cup of tea. Satish and his friend did eventually deliver peace tea to the leaders of the 4 nuclear powers, and their journey is chronicled in Satish's book, No Destination. They began their journey at the grave of Gandhi in India, and the journey ended at the grave of John F. Kennedy in the US. And it's noteworthy that, apart from crossing the English Channel and the Atlantic by boat, they really did walk all the way. That journey taught Satish a great deal. In particular, he said he learned that if he travels as an Indian with an Indian flag, he'll meet a Pakistani or a Russian or a US citizen carrying their flags. If he goes as a socialist, he'll meet a capitalist. If he goes as a brown man, he'll meet a white man or a black man. But if he travels through life as a human being, he'll meet only human beings. So Satish concluded that if people could forget boundaries of country, religion, language and culture, then they could begin to understand that basically we are the same. And as such, we can learn to live with one another in peace.
Let us start with world issues. How many of you would like to make the world a better place? Ah, good. 3 of you this time. Let's take poverty. The current rise in world food prices is likely to lead to a serious outbreak of famine in less developed countries which rely on rice and wheat. We hear a lot about this from politicians, yet its roots and consequences are economic. In fact, most of the world's problems can be understood in terms of economics. Obviously, it won't provide easy answers to these problems, but it does clarify the issues. For example, we exploit the Earth's resources, trees, oil, etc., in order to create economic wealth. But we don't realise the real cost of doing so. What do we make plastic from? Oil. Right. So, what is the real cost of, let's say, using a plastic bag? It isn't just the cost of producing it. You have to think about the cost of disposing of it when you throw it away. Economists can do that. They can analyse the full social costs of our actions so we can make better choices, like should we have more airports or more railways? Should we use nuclear power or renewable energy? What are the real costs and benefits of each? As I said before, economics won't provide all the answers, but it will help you form balanced and informed opinions, and with those you may find solutions. So, to sum up this first section, if you have a wish to really understand and analyse the background to world issues and not just have an emotional response to them, then economics is absolutely essential. Let's move on to the intellectual challenge involved in economics. It's a subject that suits people who are logical thinkers and who enjoy serious debate. It's for those who like creating and testing theories. I'm not saying it's easy. It does need a good understanding of mathematics, and you do have to be able to communicate clearly in writing. But if you have these skills, then economics might just put them to the best use. And even if you aren't interested in the business world as such, because economics is related to most other subjects, it will give you a deeper understanding of anything you want to study, from politics to rocket science to fashion. And finally, there's the small matter of how you're going to earn a living. Well, careers in business, finance and management obviously all have economics at their heart. However, careers in architecture or engineering also need an understanding of what we call opportunity cost, the building block of economics. Perhaps you're interested in agriculture, overseas aid, politics or journalism. Whatever your ambition, the study of economics provides a good grounding for these and many other careers. So, in conclusion, if you want to study an interesting and interdisciplinary subject which provides relevant knowledge and skills for your future career, go for economics. It's not gloomy at all. It is, in fact, a lively and exciting science, challenging and deeply satisfying. Right, let's have another show of hands. See if...
Everything has to start somewhere, and some things which are a matter of course in our everyday lives have some interesting, not to say very strange origins.
The first idea for ice cream, for example, can be traced back to the 1st century AD when the Roman Emperor Nero ordered buckets of snow to be sent from the mountains in the north down to Rome, where it was mixed with red wine and honey and served at banquets. It's probably the Chinese, though, at around the same time, who invented the first form of the half-frozen, fruit-flavoured ice cream we know today. When Marco Polo returned from the Far East in the 13th century, he was a mine of information about how to make ice cream from snow, fruit juice and fruit pulp. As a result, it became popular in Europe, although it wasn't until the end of the 19th century that ice cream became a treat for ordinary people.
Turning to drinks, tea is something we'd find very difficult to do without in Britain, and this has an even stranger origin. According to ancient myth, in 2737 BC, a handful of dried leaves from a bush blew into a pot of boiling water, into which the Chinese emperor was staring. There is no record as to why the water was boiling, why the leaves were dried, or why the emperor was staring into the pot, but the resulting brew was to be known henceforth as chai. Is there an element of truth in this story? Nobody really knows, but what we do know is that it was to become China's national drink during the 1st century AD.
And how many of us realise that coffee was originally eaten, not drunk? Before 1000 AD, it appears that a tribe in Ethiopia began to eat ground coffee beans mixed with animal fat for extra energy. Rumour has it that a goat herd, Chaldi, had noticed his goats jumping around with more energy after chewing berries from wild coffee bushes. So he tried them, and found the same happened to him. Whether this rumour is true or not is a matter of opinion, but what we do know is that news of Chaldi's magic beans spread rapidly, and coffee consumption became a national habit, later spreading throughout the world as a popular drink.
Moving away from food and drink, skyscrapers are very common these days. And yet it wasn't until 1885 that the first one became the centre of attention in its hometown of Chicago. Nowadays, the term skyscraper is only applied to over 40 stories. The home insurance building in Chicago, with its 10 stories, was to revolutionise urban life. Its construction set off a train of events because higher buildings led to larger numbers of people living and working in the same areas.
The first escalator actually started off as a ride in an amusement park near New York in 1891. Jesse Reno pioneered a kind of moving ramp built at an angle of 25 degrees, which was a novelty for the 75,000 people who rode on it during the 2 weeks it was at the park. Another American inventor then developed a moving stairway with wooden steps, and both were displayed at an international exhibition in Paris in 1900. Where the word escalator was coined. Ultimately, the two designs merged, a stroke of genius which created the escalator that is commonly used today.
So, as you can see, every invention tells a story. More on this can be found on our website.
My brother Martin's a good example of someone who sticks with it. He's amazing. He's really bright. He actually studied Latin and Greek at Oxford University, but his real love is animation. Ever since he was a kid, he's always drawn funny little characters, and now that's his job. He's naturally talented, but he still puts hours and hours into every little animation film he does. Like, here it is, Saturday night, and I'm sure he'll be working. He might be creating a new character, or he could be working on his next short film. Clearly, he must enjoy what he does. Why else would he work so hard? But I feel sorry for his girlfriend. It can't be easy having Martin as your partner. She has to be so patient. I mean, like, for example, whenever they're about to go out, he always says, "Just need to finish this bit, shouldn't take me long." And of course, it always does. But when I see Martin giving his all to a project, it makes me realise if you want to be really good at something, then you've just got to work at it. People are just starting to notice his work, so it shouldn't be long before he gets the recognition he deserves. Another thing, he's always so positive. Like, he's certain he'll find a buyer for his next animation film. So yes,
Being positive and sticking with it are important.
Some famous golfer said this. It might have been Tiger Woods, I'm not sure. Anyway, when whoever it was asked if he thought luck came into the game, he said yes, but he noticed that the harder he practiced, the luckier he became. I like that. And it's obvious, isn't it? Take world-class performers, Tang Yun, for example. You just know it won't have been easy for him as a kid. He must have devoted most of his childhood to practicing. And though I'm no Tang Yun, I've got some idea of what his childhood must have been like, because I went to a school for gifted kids, and I remember practicing for hours every day. I may have had some natural talent, but who knows? But I did practice 6 hours a day, at least, sometimes more. We all did at that school. I remember hearing a programme about gifted kids once. It said that the gift seemed to be they just didn't mind spending hours practicing. And that's true. It's not that we just picked up an instrument at the age of 2 and started playing Beethoven's violin concertos or anything. But I'm afraid I didn't stick with it. Well, not enough to earn a living as a soloist. My father says I can't have wanted it badly enough, or I wouldn't have given up. I guess he's right.
I think I had different strategies for different levels, really. At a very low level, I started off by memorising a lot of vocabulary, and only after that I actually started looking into how the sentences build, so the grammar side of things. That was clearly supplemented with an awful lot of grammar exercise, which is always very important. But it's quite interesting because the memorising has always worked for me, and not only in learning English, but also learning other languages, Russian, for example. But at a higher level, I think things change quite a lot. The things I've always done now, for example, reading the papers, I think that's very, very important. It just not only helps you to learn new words, especially if you start reading the big newspaper, but you can also keep up with what's going on in the country, where the language you're learning is spoken. But in addition to normal newspapers, I think it's quite important to remember that language is changing at all times. So, for example, reading the classics has always been one of my passions, which is absolutely, it's absolutely brilliant. And you can learn so much from those books, but you have to remember that you run the risk of using words which are terribly out of date, and you end up speaking like Jane Austen, which I almost did at some point in my language learning. So just reading magazines, for example, is a perfect way to keep up to date with a current language and new terminology. And so is using the internet. I found the internet very, very useful at a higher level. Also, the other thing is, to be honest, watch television and listen to the radio. In England, there's so many local and regional accents, and so you just learn to hear the different ways of pronouncing words. And the other thing, when you learn new words, I've always tried to use them then in conversations, always bring them up. And for me, it was a very easy way to remember new words. I used to have, I don't do this anymore, but I used to have a little notebook with an alphabetical order. It was like one of those booklets you buy for telephone numbers. And every time I came across a new word, I would just jot it down in my little book. And just maybe writing it would help me memorize it, the word a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. So at the end of this, my period of studies, I actually ended up with my own little dictionary. But I suppose the main thing is just try and speak as much as you can. You can do a lot of grammar work. You can do take a lot of language lessons. But I think it's very important to try and put into practice what you've learned on the books. Maybe just it's just the kind of person I am, but I'm a very gregarious learner, I think. So going out, meeting people, I even, found myself an English husband, just try and interact with other people as much as possible. And the more you speak, the better the language skills will be, I think.
Yes, I've tried to learn various languages at different points of my life, including French, Italian, Mandarin and Arabic, all with rather different levels of success. I think when starting out, I've found the classroom experience very helpful. I enjoy the sociable nature of learning in a group and being instructed by a professional. However, as I move up into sort of intermediate level, I prefer to work more independently. What's been really useful for me is reading. Anything from trashy magazines to crime novels to love stories. Even actually things in translation have been quite good because translators tend to simplify the original language. Also reading newspapers, because I think in this way you acquire language a bit like a sponge acquires water. So you absorb new vocabulary, you consolidate your knowledge of grammar, you just get a feel for the right word in the right place. I also like to listen a lot, so I buy CDs occasionally or download stuff to my iPod so I can listen in the car or when out for a walk. I go and see foreign films when possible. I hate anything that's dubbed. I really think that spoils it. But it all takes effort, and I think people tend to underestimate the amount of time it takes to learn a language. Having said that, I do feel I ought to do more grammar exercises because I'm still a bit woolly about some of the grammar. I do like to learn new vocabulary, and I often I look up words in a dictionary and I put a tick next to the word when I look it up. So if I have to look it up again and I already see a tick, I know I really have to learn it because it's a high frequency word. And, you just have to go for it. I think people are actually quite tolerant of you when you try to speak their language. They don't mind you making mistakes. So, just go out and be creative with the language even. There was a great Irish writer called Samuel Beckett, and he used to write in English, and then he switched to French as he found it gave him more freedom to express himself away from the constraints of the English language. Now, how amazing is that? I think once you've got to an advanced level, you need to leave the classroom behind, really. Language learning doesn't stop there. There's a whole load of things to learn, but you have to go out and do it by yourself and interact with people and do all these things like reading and listening by yourself.
Colin, this TV series you've made, it's all about singing, isn't it?
Yes, we wanted to show how wonderful singing with other people is and how much fun it is. In fact, singing in the UK is second only to sport in the number of people involved in it. Someone's estimated that there are over 25,000 choirs and 500,000 singers in this country. That shouldn't really be a surprise. It is, after all, a free and immediate way to get across what you're feeling. It improves your fitness, it increases lung capacity and gives you better posture. And nothing beats the sheer joy you get from singing with a group of friends.
And for the programme, you trained a group of novice singers to sing in a choir.
Right. We called ourselves Abacus, and the series follows the choir's progress from the auditions through rehearsals up to our performance in the competition Champion Choir.
And how did you do?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but we did very well. The singers' timing improved hugely, as did their confidence. But what's given me the most pleasure is the fact that many of them say that singing is a necessary part of their lives now. I've always worked with professional musicians, and these people aren't. They've got jobs and busy lives outside singing, so working with them in the choir was a great experience for me.
Can everybody sing?
Yes, we can all sing in that we've all got the physical equipment to do it. As children, we do it naturally, but we can't seem to keep that up. You know, singing with the same freedom and lack of embarrassment. The other day, for example, I asked this 30-year-old guy to sing a line from his favourite song, and like most people, he tried to sing it in the style of the artist who'd recorded it. When I eventually got him to sing something in his own real voice, he clearly felt as if he'd revealed a side of himself that was meant to be private. But that's what you have to do, and it's scary.
So what is it about singing in a choir that's so good?
I guess if you asked most choral singers, they'd say you can hide better in a group. It's not the end of the world if you sing a wrong note, as the collective sound will probably drown it. When you're in a choir, you get to sing lots of different kinds of music. Some of it may not be to your own personal taste, but somehow, when you're doing it in a group, it doesn't seem to matter as much. The job of singing takes over.
And what about you? Do you have any plans for future choirs?
Yes, I want to form a choir of teenagers. Now, with them, I know I won't be able to get away with the methods I've adopted with Abacus. People tell me they won't listen to me, but I'm confident we'll be able to work together. What the end result will be is anyone's guess, but it'll be exciting.
Speaker 1.
To be honest, I haven't worked out how I feel yet and what might happen. A new career, perhaps. I only sent it in because Dave made me. It was one of a series I'd taken of water on our holiday last year, and it was quite an unusual interpretation, according to the judges. Dave thinks my success is all down to him. Maybe there wasn't much competition. Who knows?
Speaker 2.
I only took it up so I could play something with my kids. They'd learned it at school, but I had to start from scratch, and it's not easy. At first, it took me ages to remember the rules about how each piece can move, and I was very hesitant, which must have annoyed everyone. So I think it's quite a triumph to win a prize at my age. I beat loads of younger people. My kids can't believe it.
Speaker 3.
I was stuck for what to do for my end-of-year project at college. Then I happened to see a photo in a magazine of a woman wearing an interesting dress, and I thought I could use that and add my own touches to it. I've never told anyone that that's what I did. It's not something you boast about, especially after it won a prize and was seen by everyone in college. As a result of winning, my future is looking full of promise.
Speaker 4.
I was reading a magazine in the garden one day and came across the competition. I'd had some things swirling about in my head for ages, so I just put it all down and sent it off. I'd no idea whether it was any good or not, so imagine how I felt when I saw it printed in a magazine a few months later. Nobody had told me I'd won. So I rang them up and asked them to send me any comments from the judges, because I thought it would be useful to know what they thought.